Welcome to episode 6 of Only Connect, a MarkLives.com podcast. I'm your host, Bradley Elliott, founder of Platinum Seed and Continuon. This month, I'm chatting to Nic Latouf, co-founder of Veldskoen. Veldskoen is fast becoming one of South Africa's most globally recognized brands, which is actually Veldskoen's North Star. And I chat to Nic about retail, how they built and scaled the brand from South Africa, and the power of community in enabling them to do that. Enjoy this month's episode. So I think, just off the back, I mean, for those who don't know Veldskoen, can you just give me a bit of background about how you guys started? And I mean, sure. Obviously, as I said, I've been watching your journey quite closely. Some really big successes in the last year or two. You know, Ashton Kutcher, I think, was one of those sort of pivotal moments. And now having gone into Woolworths, which is where I'd really like to focus a bit on, given that our topic is retail and recessions.
100%. And there's a couple of other things, a couple of other exciting things that have happened as well that I'll tell you about.
Amazing. Cool.
I also come from the digital online space. So a friend of mine and I, we used to have an agency in Joburg, but more just like a little PPC agency. And I saw that the trends, probably about 3.5 years ago, I saw that the trends were really moving into video. So I decided to pack up and move to Cape Town with my family. For a variety of reasons, but also one specifically because a lot of the creative talent sits in Cape Town, and I thought it'd be a great space to build out an agency focused on video at that time. I landed in Cape Town, and two old mates from school, literally within the first month, get hold of me and tell me that they've come up with this idea for a shoe. I mean, their story is just absolutely fascinating as to how they came up about this. They were both driving two separate sides of the country and having a conversation, literally a 4-hour conversation about how terrible the South African team looked when they walked out of the tunnel at the Olympic.
Yeah.
Nick said to Ross, but there's nothing that true South African that they could be wearing. And then the other one said, but there's Veldskoen. And then I said, but Veldskoen's like really ugly.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, well, why don't we make it like not ugly? And literally what they did was they phoned the designer while they were chatting about this, and got them to pull a picture of a pair of Veldskoen online and literally color in the soles and send it to them in a bunch of colors. By the end of that journey, they had a whole bunch of designs, and they put in the trademark for the word Veldskoen. So when I landed in Cape Town, Ross got hold of me on LinkedIn and said to me, listen, dear, we've got this shoot that we'd love to chat to you about, etc. And apparently everybody up until then had been laughing at them about this shoot. Yeah. Wives, friends, like everybody. And what was interesting to me was the way I felt when I saw it, because you mentioned Veldskoen to me, and I'm like a white English liberal background, and I'm not interested. I mean, that's not something that I'd ever wear. Until I saw how, whether they knew what they were doing or not knew what they were doing, or whether it was by accident or whether it was well thought out, they had reimagined a shoe that was so close to our heritage. And we all know that Veldskoen, we all have a specific lens that we look at Veldskoen through. And the way I felt when I saw the shoe fascinated me, and I thought, if I feel this way, like others must as well. And I loved that idea of how I felt, and I thought I want to get involved with this. And we formed a partnership. We started in eCommerce space. We started building it out, and we started doing really well. I come from a big storytelling background, and that was really key to the success of the business. Is how we positioned the story, how we told the story, how we collaborated with people to tell the story, how we built audiences, etc. And it wasn't long after that Brian Joffe of Bitvest fame, who's I don't know if you know that part of our story.
No, I don't. I don't know at all. Yeah.
So Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher weren't our first investors. What happened was Brian Joffe's team knocked on our door, and Brian Joffe's out of Bitvest now, and he started up a new company called Long for Life, and they own Sportsman's Warehouse, they own Outdoor Warehouse, they own Sorbet Group, they own a whole bunch of really exciting businesses here in South Africa, and they got hold of us, and they really loved what we were doing. They bought a big chunk of our business, which was really interesting because it positioned us in an interesting space where we were able to then talk to the Sportsman Warehouse guys, talk to the Outdoor Warehouse guys, and start looking at that retail aspect, which we had never thought of in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, gives you access to retail.
Yeah, 100%. So that gave us access to retail locally. The brand has did really well, and people continue to get excited about it. People continue to purchase. We moved into Outdoor Warehouse. Over a period of time, it became their best-selling shoe. And we always set out to build, and it's still very much our vision and our North Star within this business is to build South Africa's most recognizable brand globally. But there really isn't one. There's Nando's, there's Mrs. Ball's Chutney, there's a couple, but not truly recognizable globally. And we feel like we've got the opportunity to really do that, and for everybody to be a part of that story. We always say that we're not the owners of Veldskoen, we're just the custodians of this great brand. And we were sitting in our boardroom, and we were literally discussing how we're going to tackle America. We were already live in the UK, doing pretty well in the UK, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden we got an email from somebody who is this ex-surfer guy called Steve Watt, who had ex-Durban surfer who had moved to California. And started a little surf brand over there, and done pretty well. He came to visit his family, and everywhere he went, he saw people wearing our shoes, and got hold of us and said, "Is there any opportunity to have a discussion about America?" We said, "Absolutely," and flew down and met him, and later found out that he's got a company called Slide Handboard, and what he had done, or him and his wife, who is American, had actually gotten themselves onto Shark Tank America and got funded by Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher.
Okay.
So when we started doing the business deal with them, they obviously had to do, through due diligence, etc., they had to disclose to Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher, because they were in business with them, that they were getting involved with us. So Mark and Ashton were quite interested as to what it was. So we sent them a pair of shoes each, and they absolutely loved it, and asked if they could get involved. And we said absolutely. Ashton's interesting because he's not allowed to just wear any brand. Guys pay up to like $500,000 for him to wear something or tweet something or whatnot. But he absolutely fell in love with the shoes, and we just saw for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. Every time he was in the news, he was wearing our shoes. So that definitely helped.
And did that actually start driving an effect on sales and the bottom line? Did you actually see like a uptick?
So here's the interesting thing: the story of us building the brand out globally is what people love here. In the States, it's a very different world right now. And I'll give you an example. So, Steve and I were having the discussion the other day that he was at a wedding in San Francisco, and he was talking to a bunch of people a little bit younger than us, and was talking about how Ashton Kutcher was invested in the company, etc. And they all looked at him and they said, "Ashton, who?" So I think that landscape with that type of celebrity is changing. When you talk about the influencers, etc. We go back to this discussion that we have often at the office about, there was a study that was done in the UK not too long ago, where they asked all these 14-year-olds, what is it that you want to be when you grow up? And 80% of them came back and said, I want to be a YouTuber or an influencer.
Amazing. What an awesome world we live in.
The guy who wins Fortnite is way more popular than Kanye West. In America, it doesn't have as much weight. Locally, it does. Because I think people find it really exciting, and I think if you want to tell a really good brand story, it all boils down to how you tap into people's inner narratives. And I think a lot of what's happening in the country is there's a lot of uncertainty. People are worried. People are scared, and a lot of why we tell our story that way is because we really believe, and we've proven it that anybody can do it. We started the business with no money, and we built it into a really, really, really successful brand that is 100% going global and becoming very recognizable around the world. Digital and the internet has changed that. This wasn't possible 10, 15 years ago, but it is very possible now. That wasn't the only story that had a huge effect locally. Another one was our Prince Harry story. I don't know if you've heard that one. So a couple of months ago, my partner's in London at the time, and I get an email from the editor of the Times of London, who says to me, I was at a dinner party last night, and I saw Prince Harry wearing a pair of your red Veldskoen. And he says, do you have a picture? I was about to ask you the same thing. Do you have a picture? Because, we don't. So he says, okay, no problem. So him and Nick have a chat, a couple of discussions, and he says, look, he's seen it, and that's good enough to run a story.
Mm-hmm.
So the first week he runs a little story about Veldskoen in general and about the history of the shoe, etc. And then the following Saturday he runs a little piece in the lifestyle section that has a picture of our red Pinnacle shoe,
mm-hmm.
and it has the words "Prince Harry is a fan."
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want to talk about influence having a direct impact on sales,
mm-hmm.
we did in about 3 hours, we did about 400,000 rand turnover.
Yeah.
When that and it carried on like that for days.
That is crazy.
And the impact it had was unbelievable. So if you got the Shopify app, you get a little ding ding every time there's a sale. And we woke up and our phone was literally going ding ding. Ding, 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 ding.
Mm.
And it carried on like that for days with that tiny, tiny, tiny little piece with the words Prince Harry is a fan.
Okay, let's touch on e-commerce quickly, because that's always an interesting one.
Yes.
Really small e-commerce environment in South Africa. This year, I believe, so just so you know, last year we did an online retail, or the biggest e-commerce report with Arthur Goldstack. And this year we're doing it again. And we actually just surveyed all the retailers. So we weren't really we weren't interested, but we weren't looking at consumers. We're looking at retailers, what sort of revenues and profits they do out of online and e-commerce, etc. And it was still a relatively small market. This year, I think we're going to hit that magic, like 2% of total retail will be from online, which is a really critical number. Beautiful. Because that's when after that, that's
still small compared, but growing.
But when you hit that, when you hit over that 2% mark, we've seen it globally. That's when the magic starts to happen. And I'll give you an example of some of the bigger sort of let's call them daily deal sites. You can put two and two together. They've actually just become really, really profitable this year. For the last 9 years, they haven't been turning a profit, and this year they're turning a mega profit. So I think there's great growth in this space. You said you grew through e-commerce originally. Can you just tell me a little bit more around that strategy? And whether it was local or global, and evidently you still sell a hell of a lot through e-commerce by the sounds of things.
We still do incredibly well with e-commerce, and I come from an interesting e-commerce background, and I'm really excited about the space. We never actually wanted to get into retail, into physical brick and mortar retail. We wanted to continue to grow our business through e-commerce, and we were doing that successfully until the time we got investment from a listed partner, and they opened those doors for us, and that became very exciting, and we saw a whole new avenue to grow the brand. And one of the again, part of our North Star was that we wanted to get the shoes on as many South Africans as possible. So that allows us to do that. I mean, we're not just in Woolies, we're in Outdoor Warehouse, we're in about 17 smaller retailers, and we're also in Techie Town.
Yeah.
And all those partnerships have allowed us to really reach areas around South Africa that aren't as online or e-commerce savvy. But back to the e-commerce side, our strategy has been simple. Our strategy has been, we still live in an age where, at the moment, Facebook ads are incredibly effective. It has changed over the last 2 years a lot. Yeah. I think it was a lot easier 2 years ago with the way that you could set up ads and target and build audiences, etc. It is getting harder. The space is becoming crowded, and there's less ability from the actual platform to run as effective ads. But we spend no money on Google. We spend all our money on Facebook and Instagram, and we do that very, very, very well. And that side of the business still accounts for a huge portion of our turnover in South Africa, and continues to grow.
I think you can dominate. I mean, for Google, it doesn't necessarily make sense for a branded term like Veldskoen, because you would dominate that anyway through natural sort of organic ranking.
And we do.
And I think that's the thing that I heard many years ago. I mean, in London, sort of in 2012, when e-commerce was really blowing up there, was that the guy said, to do well in e-commerce, you either need to be super, super niche, have a really super niche product, or be absolutely generalist. If you're sitting in between, you don't win. And I think that may be part of your success, is that it is just so niche. You don't have a huge range, but you're selling one thing. You're the only guys that do it. and you do it well. And I think that's why it's working. So just in terms of your international strategy and thinking about that, do you have distributors in other countries now for physical retail?
We always consider ourselves a media and a storytelling company first and a shoe company second. That's how we like to think of ourselves, you know. So it's always story first. And really part of the story that we're telling is how we're building this brand out globally with South Africans around the world. So, you know, in all our travels, everywhere we go, we always meet the most incredible South Africans doing the most incredible things in the strangest places around the world. No matter where you go, you're always going to find a South African doing something really, really amazing in some town or some city around the world. So what we set out to do is to partner with South Africans around the world to build up this brand. We got an old school friend who's done really well in Canada who reached out to us recently and said he'd love to handle Canada for us. So, you know, we're in discussion with a distribution agreement over there. We've got Jimmy out in Asia, who's a guy who's a South African from Durban as well, who's well known in Asia for taking rooibos tea and being very successful with rooibos tea there. Yeah. And what he did was he positioned it as the drink to drink when you're pregnant. And it's absolutely killed it over there. Yeah. So he's our partner in Asia. In America, it's a little bit different. We're a 50% shareholder in an entity over there because it's a really, really, really big play, and it also allows us to drive more product into the States. Yeah. You know, we don't only own Veldskoen, we also own a really cool flip-flop brand that we're building out, which we're going to take a little bit more time with, called Platy. Nice. And the same thing in Australia, and the same thing throughout Europe is we have distribution agreements over there. The tricky thing is, which we're also trying to figure out, how do you tell the story globally? The things people care about in Asia are very different to the things people care about in the States, are very different to the things people care about in Australia. So those are the things we're trying to figure out. Do we have one Instagram account globally, or do we have one Instagram account for each region? It's a little bit of trial and error at the moment, but I think we're starting to figure it out. I think in a year from now, if we have this conversation, I'll have a lot more insight into how to, from a platform perspective and from a social media perspective, how to build out a global brand.
My instinct or gut tells me that you'd probably need to have separate accounts for each of them.
I agree. That is the way that it's currently going.
But you do have a great, really single narrative, and that is your story. And that story can be everyone loves a story of success. And it's really great to hear that not only are you telling the story, but you're actually living it. So, and what I mean by that is you choose like South African expats living overseas to go do your distribution. You don't just partner with the biggest distribution company. No. So you actually are authentic in your story, which I think authenticity, trust, success are all great threads for a good story.
To make the shoe here in South Africa is not cheap.
Well, especially clothing industry, it's not competitive because of neighbor laws.
And it's easy for us to go to China and to do this, but we'll never. And that's where we positioned our company, and we'll 100% always stay true to that. Yeah. And we'll only work with South Africans around the world in building out this brand.
Now, having gone into the sort of traditional retail space like Woolworths and those sorts of things, we understand that all of these guys are under massive pressure globally, right? I mean, retail's changing. I don't think brick and mortar will ever die, but it's definitely changing and shifting.
Right. So it's not going to die. It is evolving.
And in terms of just the volumes of sales coming out of traditional versus e-commerce retail in different countries, obviously you did build your brand on e-commerce in South Africa, but now having sort of gone into Woolworths and obviously you're in Taki Town, what sort of volumes are you starting to see? I'm assuming the volumes are going to be massive compared to your e-commerce play, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean it. I'm not going to go into specific numbers.
No, please don't go into numbers. I don't want to.
But from an e-commerce perspective, you know, like I said earlier, is we do very, very, very well. Yeah. But from a retail perspective, we also do very well. But there's three sides to it. So there's retail, there's online retail, there's brick and mortar retail, and then there's B2B, which is also a massive side of the business. So an investor, for example, who want to do a collaboration with 1,000 or 2,000 pairs of shoes, that's also a massive business for us. You know, so that side of the business also does really well. Going back to what I was saying about our store warehouse, we are their best-selling shoe, and they're a big retailer around the country. Yeah. We've only been in Woolworths for the last around about 3 weeks, and they've placed their second, I think, up to their third order already. Mm-hmm. Looking international, there's no reason for us to even think about brick and mortar retail in the States. Yeah. The online play is big enough, yeah. And so that conversation is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. We are telling the idea in the UK, because it's a very, very, very different landscape to the States, and we're also entertaining that idea in Australia. Let's have another conversation in a couple of months' time, and I'll let you know how all of that plays out.
Just two more things from my side, Nic. The one is around, which you mentioned, is the importance of community. And you strike me as the type of person who's probably read the book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you have or haven't.
Very, very long time ago.
And you might remember early on in that book, it talks about Hush Puppies, which I'm sure you'll know as a brand, and how Hush Puppies was dying in the early 90s. And all of a sudden, there's a small sort of community of, like, I think they didn't term them this, but hipsters in New York effectively started wearing Hush Puppies again. And then it just blew up. So, and it sounds kind of similar to what you're telling me here. Like, you've got these communities that are like so vested in the brand and so vested in the story, and they're just influencing the bigger market. And is that a purposeful strategy that someone can do, or is that just by luck? I mean, so you talk about, your mate in San Fran.
Let me tell you what the secret is.
Yeah.
It's 100% thought out, and the secret is openness.
Yeah.
So we've never ever turned down a collaboration. We probably won't post every collaboration on our pages or talk about every collaboration, but we've never ever turned down a collaboration. We've never turned down a meeting. We built out a story lab, which you're welcome to come and visit out in Pardon Island, where we literally it's open to the public, and we have people working there for free, as long as everybody collaborates with each other. And so the real key to this is openness, and I think that brands and people and companies still need to learn that. When people approach us, we're always available, and as a brand, the same thing. So everybody that's reached out to us to collaborate or to do something, we've always said 100%. Sounds amazing. This is the everyman shoe. This is all of our shoe. Let's do it. And that's 100% the reason why we've been able to build such community and become so influential.
You talk about openness. I'll tie that through to authenticity, values of honesty, trust, all those sorts of things. Because the big brands, that's what brands are struggling with, right? They just want to push message, and then they try and create these authentic stories about sustainability. I don't know. I'm just talking. People see through it, but they also just don't practice it.
We live in a society now that is so exposed because of social media. Whether it's a good thing or not is what it is.
Yeah.
You need to use that to your advantage in the sense that people are so protective over their brand, so protective over their ideas, so protective over their IP. We decided a long time ago to not be like that at all. And we're not protective over our ideas. We're not protective over our IP, etc. I mean, the amount of Veldskoen brands that have popped up that have coloured soles and coloured laces, even though we trademarked it, there's new ones popping up all the time. And that excites them.
Yeah.
And we're never going to go after them maliciously.
Yeah.
It's never about that. We really, really, really believe and want everybody to be successful and everybody to be a part of the story and us to be part of other people's stories. As an example, we got this guy that started working out of our space recently, and he started this really cool little cork sneaker company. He also, very much like us, knew nothing about sneakers or the shoe world or whatnot, and it started to do really, really, really well. Just kind of like being around the people that we're around, and that really excites us, and that really makes us happy. And it's not easy because it's so almost counterintuitive to a lot of people, but that's the new world.
Yeah,
we're all exposed and we're all open, and to be with it or not.
People can copy what you're doing, but that's flattery, right?
Absolutely.
It actually does your brand better at the end of the day. Like it actually halos the Veldskoen brand. Nic, I'm not going to take any more of your time. I really appreciate you chatting to me on a public holiday. Although having been an entrepreneur, I guess there's no such thing as a public holiday. But I appreciate it anyway.
That was a great chat.
Okay, I'm definitely going to pop into Pardon Island. My offices are in Zonnebloem, so I'm just around the corner.
Oh, fantastic. Please do. Just pop me a message and pop around.
So I really appreciate your time and have a lacquer day.
Huge pleasure. You too, man.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to episode 6 of Only Connect, a MarkLives.com podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Bradley Elliott, founder of Platinum Seed and Continuon. If you'd like to know more about e-commerce, retail, and how to scale your business globally, please feel free to contact me on bradley@platinumseed.com. Until next time, keep connecting.